Welcome everybody, today I'm going to do a breakdown of Excalibur, one of the starting Warframes. Excalibur is a melee-oriented Warframe whose goal is to run around and do a lot of DPS with swords. Because of that, Excalibur plays as a really damage-heavy frame with a little bit of CC used for survivability and no real utility. So if you're looking at getting a new frame, basically look at him as a DPS frame. Looking to break down Excalibur's skills, we're going to start with his passive. His passive is that he gains 10% attack speed and 10% damage with swords, dual swords, nakanas, and rapiers. So if you're looking to maximize Excalibur, definitely bring one of those types of melee weapons. His 1 is that he dashes between enemies dealing damage. That damage scales with power strength, and the range of the dash scales with power range. This is mostly a mobility ability, kind of used for survivability, dodging things. It can be useful for damage at low levels, but at higher levels I just kind of rely on parkour and don't use this ability a whole lot. His 2 is going to be an AoE blind. The duration of the blind scales with power duration, and the range of the blind scales with power range. This is a useful CC ability because it makes enemies more vulnerable to melee finishers, which is important on a frame that relies essentially entirely on melee. But it must have line of sight, so when he casts this ability he kind of holds his hand up, and from that point to the enemies, it has to have line of sight for them to be affected by it. It also makes enemies slower and kind of less accurate, so it helps keep them alive. His 3 is going to shoot javelins at nearby enemies. The damage of these is going to scale with power strength, and the range of this ability is going to scale with power range. Now there's entire builds for Excalibur surrounding this ability because it can be so powerful with AoE damage, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Looking at Excalibur's 4th ability, this is kind of be his bread and butter, the thing that everybody knows Excalibur for. He draws his energy sword, and every time he melees, it shoots forth a wave of energy. Now this energy has increased crit chance, increased crit damage, and increased status chance. And this ability is affected by a lot of the mods you have on your melee weapon. So the stronger mods you have on your melee weapon, the stronger this ability is going to be. But the important part is that since the energy shoots forward and actually moves, it basically makes a melee weapon into a ranged weapon. Super useful at close and medium ranges, but can struggle a little bit at long range just because the projectile speed is so slow, but that depends on the enemies you're up against in the situation. The power damage is going to scale with power strength. Power range is only going to affect the blind range, and power duration is only going to affect the blind duration. And the reason I mention that is because when you slide and then press E, at least on PC, wherever your melee button is, while you have this ability active, he actually does his blind. So you can basically slide around, blinding all your enemies, and then doing massive amounts of melee damage to them with this ability. Now I'd kind of like to discuss some of the builds that I see as viable on Excalibur, and the 2 that I see are going to be builds basically for his 3rd and 4th ability. Basically the 3rd ability build, you go for power strength and range as much as possible, and you just sit there, spam this ability, and just kill the enemies. The problem with this is it's going to be really energy hungry, so you usually need like an EV Trinity or something else to give you enough energy to actually keep spamming this ability. But it's effective at pretty high level enemies and will just kill all of them, so it's kind of used as an experience farm type thing, stuff like that. It's not really a very entertaining build, but it'll definitely get the job done, but I would not necessarily recommend it for newer players. Now the build around his 4 is going to be the one that I recommend. It's the one that I use on my Excalibur, and I have a ton of fun with it. Basically you just go for power efficiency, and if you can, some strength, but the rest doesn't really matter at all because it only affects the blind, which isn't super important but can be kind of nice. But basically what you do is you just activate his 4 and just go around meleeing every enemy you see. Hopefully if you get enough kills, they'll drop enough energy, and if you have enough efficiency, you can essentially just stay in his 4 forever and just have all of those buffs that I mentioned before, and just go around doing massive amounts of melee damage that is kind of ranged because of this ability to all the enemies. So that's why I think this is where Excalibur truly shines. Last, I'd just like to give some closing tips on playing Excalibur. Basically, I'm just going to talk about the 4 build because that's the one that I play when I use Excalibur. Basically, you just pop the 4 Exalted Blade and you just run around killing as many enemies as you can, hoping for energy drops. And you pick up those energy drops that, combined with your power efficiency, is probably going to let you stay in Exalted Blade almost permanently, really. If you're in a tight spot or there's tougher enemies, that's when you use the Slide Blind, because that's going to keep them off of you and keep you alive. Excalibur has a really straightforward playstyle in general. It's got a lot of easy damage. He doesn't have any hard combos, anything like that. So I definitely recommend him for newer players, especially if you haven't started playing Warframe yet and you're looking at which one to pick to start. If this stuff sounds good so far, I would definitely recommend Excalibur. He's a frame I started with when I started playing Warframe. He's since been reworked, which is now all the stuff that I'm talking about, so he's great now. I'm a little bit jealous. He was terrible when I started, at least in my opinion. But definitely take a look at him if you're looking at getting a DPS frame. If anything I said so far in the video was wrong, definitely correct me in the comments, because I definitely don't want to be giving out false information. If you have your own builds or opinions on Excalibur, maybe something I haven't thought of or heard of, definitely let me know in the comments as well. If you're new to playing Warframe, you're trying to learn stuff, then let me know what you'd like to see a breakdown of next, be it a frame, a weapon, strategy, just how any of the game mechanics work. Just let me know, and I'll definitely look into making a video to try and help you guys out. Till next time, take care everybody.